right now, it's before I got my heart. So they come in, and they got what's called a PICC line. I think it went in my neck. I'm not sure. It could have went in my arm. A PICC line is basically an IV, but it's got a bunch of different outlets on it. And that kept getting infected. And I got pancreatitis and sepsis, blood poisoning. I don't know how that dumb thing got infected, but they pulled it out, and I started to recover. But in the meantime, they couldn't operate on me when I had that. And that delayed it probably about a week. And the whole time, I'm on this IV. I don't know, they got like 6 bags hooked up to me. I don't know what they're putting in my arm, but I'm feeling pretty good. You know what I mean? I'm not feeling so bad. They had me do a 6-minute walk, part of the workup for the heart. Let's see how far you can walk. Walk as fast as you can in 6 minutes. So they got some cones and some markers out in the hall, in a deserted hallway, and I got my IV. The nurse has the IV pole with me, and we go back and forth for 6 minutes, and I was cruising. She almost had to run. She could barely keep up to me with that, with all my tubing, But I'm not feeling that bad, so I'm not thinking this is a big deal yet, dumb as I am. And so I get over that infection junk. I got so cold and feverish from that, and they kept on coming in and telling me, I kept on telling them I got a really sore throat, really sore. Yeah, the air in here is pretty dry, and this is the doctors telling me this, It's just the dry air, and I'm like, no, something's wrong. And that's when they discovered I had that infection, and I was sick with pancreatitis or whatever it's called. So took me a while to recover from that. Now, okay, they're getting ready to put me on this list, right? And there's bad news, because I think it's bad news. They come in and they're like, yeah, we're about ready. You passed all your tests, everything we tested on your whole body. Your whole body looks like it's about, everything tests like a person about 10 years younger than you, and I knew it. You know what I mean? I knew. I'm the youngest 60-year-old guy they've ever seen. So I passed everything with flying colors, thank God, because every one of those tests, I was so afraid I was going to fail. I'd never had a colonoscopy. I've never had any of those scans done on my liver or my thyroid or any of that. I thought if I flunk one of these tests, I have no chance at getting a heart. And the alternative to getting a heart was this thing called an LVAD. And it was a device that really scared the crap out of me. It's a robotic pump that helps what's left of your heart. It's a major surgery. They put it in you to replace your heart, basically. And then you got wires coming out of you. You can't take a shower. You can't get wet. You got a vest with batteries. You got a belt with a computer. It's the scariest device I've ever seen. And the heart transplant list works like this. It's been revised in the last few years. They rate you at a number from 1 to 7. And 7 being a guy that's stable and can live for years. And 1 being a guy or a person that's going to die in the next 48 hours. Well, I was rated at number 2. So the only people ahead of me on the transplant list were people that were going to die in the next 48 hours. So, wow, I was like, they must have cheated to get me up that high on the list. You know what I mean? There's no way I'm as bad as that, you know. But I was glad I was that high on the list. But the bad news about the list is you're only on it for 8 days. I found that out at the end, you know. And I was like, 8 days? Because they told me, right now there's 3,000 people in the United States on this list. 3,000 people waiting for hearts. And you're going to be on it for 8 days. And that scared the heck out of me, because if I don't get a heart, I get that device. And I was talking on the phone with my 9-year-old at that time. And she must have overheard, you know, 9-year-olds are smart. She must have overheard some adults talking about this or something. Because she said, "Dad, don't get that robot heart. We won't be able to go swimming anymore." I mean, it about tore my heart out. But she was right. I told Dr. Alexi when he came in, I said, "I don't want an LVAD, you know. Don't stick me with an LVAD, please." And he said, you know, he's got that accent, "No, no, Joe. You do not want that. We're going for the heart." You know, and then I knew right away, this guy, he's, you know, because another thing I said to him one time, I said, "Dr. Alexi, Dr. Fixker told me that I might never leave this place." And Dr. Alexi told me, "Well, if it's up to me, you'll leave this place." So, I mean, he was wonderful, you know, before and after the surgery. But now where were we? We were, okay, I had that infection, they put me off. I didn't get on the list yet. To get on the list, okay, they come in, they tell me, "Yep, you're going to be on the list. But you have a blood type, you have the universal blood type." Can't remember what it is. O positive or something. I don't know. It's the universal blood type. Interchanges with everybody, you know. And I'm like, well, that's great. That's great. I'm all excited. And they're like, no, that's bad. Because that's the heart that everybody wants. You can put it in anyone, you know. So I'm like, oh no. 8 days, I got the wrong blood type. And now I got this infection, you know. So the infection clears up. They're just about to put me on the blood. They give me one more blood test. And now they come in the morning. It's about 7 a.m. They have a little meeting outside the door every morning. And then they come in and tell me how I'm doing, what's going on, what the plan is. Anyway, they come in. There's always like 4 of them. They said, "Yeah, you've got," Dr. Lexi wasn't there. It was, you know, he leaves at 5 o'clock every day, and he gets there at like 8. But anyway, but he's there longer than that. The guy never sleeps. I mean, he's just busy a lot. But anyway, these guys, they come in, they tell me, "Yeah, you got what's called it's mono." It's, what's it called? It's a virus. It's Epstein-Barr. You've got the Epstein-Barr virus, we found out. And we can't operate on you like that. So we're not only are we pulling you off the list, but the heart transplant is off for now. Because we can't put a heart in anybody with Epstein-Barr virus, active Epstein-Barr virus. And I'm like, what the heck is that? You know, where the heck did that come from? You know, and then they leave. And they leave me hanging like that. I sit there that morning for like 4 hours thinking, I'm a dead man. And this is like the 6th time that I thought I was a dead man. You know, the mental roller coaster I was on, you know, yeah, you're going to get a heart, yeah, you're not, yeah, we're going to save your old heart, no, you're not. You know, the mental roller coaster was excruciating, and I'm still going through it, to be honest with you. But now I think I'm gonna die. And 4 hours later, they come back in, same people. They call them doctors, but you know, they have these different levels of doctors. They have the fellows and the residents and the, you know what I mean? But there was one that I got handed off to at the end. Her name is Christy Newman. She's a nurse practitioner. I always thought she was a doctor. You know, they're coming in and telling me, okay, I guess we decided with Dr. Alexi that 99% of human beings on planet Earth have the Epstein-Barr virus, she goes. And she goes, usually it lays dormant inside people until they're under a lot of stress. Have you been under a lot of stress lately? She actually asked me that question. Can you believe that? I'm lying there on my deathbed, you know? I was feeling wonderful. 3 weeks later, I'm lying on my deathbed. Dr. Fitzger told me my heart was a floppy sack, and if he unhooked me from the IV bags, I'd have 2 weeks to live. So within weeks of feeling good, I went from feeling good to having 2 weeks to live. And now, 3 weeks later, she's asking me if I'm under any stress. You know, absolutely ridiculous. So now, okay, the heart transplant's back on, but my heart, they're so worried about that VTech, I'm probably not going to make it long enough to get on the list and get a heart and get it put in. So they're going to put this pump in me. It's called a balloon pump. What the balloon pump does is it helps my existing floppy sack of a heart. So it's going to boost me, man. And it works on some people and it doesn't work on others. So that's why they put it in your groin to start with. And then if it's working, they'll move it up to my collarbone area. And it's a pretty major surgery, right? They got to prep me all up for it and stuff, you know, and that's fine. So they stick this balloon pump in me and they said, don't worry, it should be only for a couple days. Right? So, okay, so they're going to put this balloon pump in my groin. And they got me all shaved up and prepped for surgery and stuff. And they said, the deal with this balloon pump is you've got to lie flat on your back and not bend that right leg at all. You can't bend it. So I'm like, all right, you know, it's only going to be for a couple days. I can do that, right? So I go in for surgery. They put in the balloon pump. Thank God it works. It's helping my heart. I'm not going into VTech anymore. It's working wonderful, and I'm laying there flat on my back with my legs straight. 1 day goes by, 2 days go by. Pretty soon, I'm like 5 days into this thing. And, you know, on the first night I asked my nurse, I go, what's going to keep me from rolling over in my sleep and bending that leg, you know? She goes, I am. I was like, all right, cool. So I'm laying there and watching movies for 7 days flat on my back. Just try doing that once. Just try to lay on your back with your legs straight and not bend your leg for a week, because that's what it wound up being, 7 days with this balloon pump in me. And I'm in agony. I'm ready to frickin' go nuts. Finally, they came in, and that was when I had the Epstein-Barr, I think. And they didn't want to move the balloon pump. That was why it took 7 days. They didn't, I'm going to get these timelines off sometimes, but that was what happened. Was I had the balloon pump in my leg when I got either the PICC line infection or I got something where they couldn't operate on me and they had to leave that in. And they came in and they told me that was the deal. Not only are we not going to move, they kept on telling me, we're going to move the balloon pump today up to your collarbone. Oh, thank goodness, you know. Then they came in that last day and said, not only are we not going to move the balloon pump, but you're not on the transplant list anymore, you know. And then they came in 4 hours later and said, okay, we're going to move the balloon pump. It was the Epstein-Barr virus, because they said everybody's got it, and it's just because you've been under stress. We're going to move the balloon pump up to your collarbone area, and then after you're stabilized from that, we'll put you back on the transplant list again. And that balloon pump will carry you over for however long it takes you to get your heart, you know. So, thank goodness they got me back down into the operating room again and moved that pump from my groin to my collarbone area. But in the meantime, this guy, he's a male nurse. He goes, it must have been in an artery in my groin. And he goes, we have to, because they threatened when they were doing angiograms and stuff on me earlier to do that through my groin. And I was like, no, through my wrist if you can, please. But anyway, he goes, I'm going to put some pressure on your groin for 40 minutes. And I'm like, wow, you know, and I mean, he's got all his weight. He's just giving her heck. He's pushing, you know, it's like somebody's punching me in the nuts. I mean, it's bad. And I'm like, okay, it's only 40 minutes. I'm watching the clock, you know, and it's going by so slow, you know. And, I made it, you know, 40 minutes with that guy leaning on my groin, just freaking crushing it. And now he says, I'm like, oh, it's over, you know. No, now we put this thing called a ladder or something or other on there. I called it the permanent nut crusher because it's some type of deal they put on there, and it's like a vice. They pump it up with air. And I mean, the more he pumped that bulb, the more I was like, oh man, you know, they got the permanent nut crusher on me. It just felt like somebody punched me in the nuts. I could barely breathe, you know. This pain is just, you know, what's your pain level, you know? And he goes, we only got to leave this on for about, I don't know what it was, 2 hours or 4 hours or some stupid thing, you know. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to take it, you know. And finally I told him, you know, you got to back this thing off or I'm going to pass out. You know, my pain level, you know, they give you that little chart with the guy, you know, what's your pain level? You know, I'm 9+. I said, you got to get this thing off me, you know. So he backed it off a little bit so it wasn't as bad. And we got through that balloon pump situation anyway. And now I'm stable. I'm laying there. Got my balloon pump where it belongs. Million IVs and tubes and wires and crap. When I was in the ER, I had to be wired to the wall, you know, hardwired. But I think I was still in the intensive care. I meant when I was in the intensive care, I was hardwired in. I couldn't leave my bed. And they'd wheel me around in that thing. But anyway, now it's time for the heart transplant. Finally, right, you guys? Sorry this has taken so long, but I want to get all the details that I can remember recorded, and then we can edit this. But bear with me. I'm ready for the heart transplant. I'm on the list at a number 2 level. But I only got 8 days, and I'm afraid, I'm scared, you know. In the meantime, Father's Day came. I don't know when that was, but I might be off the timeline again with it. But I hadn't seen Sophia in over a month and a half, something like that, a month. And it was Father's Day, and she's 9. And I asked the nurses, you know, I was worried because I know when they wheeled me around in there, those big glass doors and stuff, you can see all the other patients in there, and some of them are in really, really bad shape. It's the intensive care unit, I mean, the ICU. The ICU is a very scary place, you know. There's guys in there not only for heart stuff, but for everything, men and women. And there's no children allowed in there. But I asked the nurse, and the nurse said she'd asked the head nurse, really cool nurses again, and they said, if you want to have her, the next time your wife comes, she can bring Sophia. And Melissa had been coming every day, driving back and forth at least 3 days a week. But the stupid rush hour traffic down there, she'd get there at about 9 a.m. and she'd always want to leave around 3 because of the rush hour. And I understood that, and I understood why she had to leave every day and couldn't come every day, because we have a 9-year-old at home. She had school had just gotten out. I think that was 3rd grade, had just gotten out, first part of June in there. She had summer school that year. Melissa's mother or my sister Luann would pick her up every day from summer school. But anyway, Melissa, she came down religiously to be with me, and it was wonderful. When she walked through the door, it was just like the sun came out, because I was all alone in there, But they allowed Sophia to come for Father's Day, and I hope it didn't freak her out. It didn't seem to, And they did that, I found out later, because they didn't know, like Dr. Fisker said, I might not make it through the surgery. I might not ever leave that place. And sorry, I'm getting emotional again, because I'm thinking about Sophie, thinking about this. But that's why they let her come, and they made an exception for children to be in the intensive care unit that day for me. And she brought me some little things that she had colored for me. I really like cats, and she had colored some stuff and a little homemade get well thing, and we put that on the wall in my room, and that helped me get through. I had a lot of things that helped me get through this, and the main thing was my family. I'll go into that in the end. But Sophia, when I was home in between stints from St. Cloud there, she was doing her final, she was in choir, and they were doing their final little concert that they do. And she's 9 years old, and 3rd grade choir concert. And one of the songs they sang that she was practicing for was, I think it's a John Denver song, Country Roads. And I heard her sing it for her little friend, the neighbor girl, in her room when I was still at home. It's country roads, take me home to the place I belong. And that got me through a lot when I was in the hospital. When I was in the MRI tube or something like that, something really uncomfortable or something that hurt a lot, I just think of her singing that song in her little voice, and that was it, Come on, country roads. Those washboardy old gravel roads in Malacca. I got about a mile out to the tar from my house. Come on, country roads, take me home, man. Get me out of this place. So, yeah, that was the deal. Laying there after Father's Day, wonderful. On the heart transplant list, praying, I'll get into the religious stuff too. I won't get too far into it, but I didn't pray as much as you'd think a person would that was on their deathbed. I don't know what it was. If I was overwhelmed, don't get me wrong, there were some nights where I prayed so hard Especially after I went blind, I got down on my knees. I begged God, don't take me away yet. But I was laid there for 2 days with my balloon pump going and my IVs and my wires in the intensive care unit. And on the second day, I think it was in the evening, my phone rang in the room, which was weird because everyone would call me on my cell phone. But the regular phone in the room rang, and my nurse said, "It's your doctor," and it was Dr. Alexi. And I got to tell you one more thing. When they put me on the heart list, there was this thing called a hepatitis heart. A lot of these people that overdose and stuff, they have a hepatitis, and their heart is usable, but they told me if I checked the hepatitis box, I'd have a better chance of getting a heart. And don't worry about the hepatitis because it's 100% curable. But they got to put it in me and cure it, and then we move on from there. But it would vastly increase the chances of getting me a heart and keep me off from that LVAD. And once you get on the LVAD, you're stable, and I would have dropped from a 2 down to about a 4 or a 5, so I could have lived with that LVAD possibly forever, not good. Can't even take a shower. But so yeah, I want a heart bad at this point. So I checked the old hepatitis box, and the phone rings that day, and it's Dr. Alexi, and he says, "Hey, Joe, good news. We found you a young, healthy heart." And I said, "Is it a hepatitis heart?" "No, it's not." He said, "We got to do some work up on the donor still, make sure it's good. It's not 100% at this point, but if things go the way I think it's going to go here," he said, "we found you this good young heart, and we're going to be putting it in at 2 o'clock." I was like, 2 o'clock tonight? 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I don't know. I can't remember when it was. It was like 2 o'clock today? Yes. And because I guess they only got 4 hours to stick it in or something. I don't know. It was crazy, And he goes, "You got to be all in on this, though." And I was like, "What choice do I have? I'm in, man. Yes." So I phoned my wife right away, and I told her the good news. And the next day, they prepped me for surgery, and they wheeled me in there under the bright lights, just like on TV. You got all those big old lights shining down on you. And they put the thing over my nose, a little oxygen, and they got my IVs hooked up to the juice, the anesthesia. And I'm just laying there thinking, these might be there's a high odds of that. A lot of, I don't know if it's 20%. There's a pretty good percentage of people that don't even make it out of the surgery. They die right there on the operating table for a heart transplant. And because they've got to get it restarted. I don't know. They got to transfer me over to, I don't even know what all they did to me. Heart-lung machine, all that stuff. Crazy, you know what I mean? I'm laying there thinking under the bright lights. They turn on the anesthesia. These might be the last conscious thoughts I ever have on planet Earth. These thoughts I'm thinking right now. And next thing I know, it was 7 days later, I woke up. Melissa told me some of the stuff that went on in the meantime. I was only supposed to be in a coma. They put me in a purposely done coma, I can't think of the terminology, sorry, but induced coma. They put me in that. It was only supposed to be for 2 or 3 days, and on like the 4th day, Melissa was down there every day. She'd come down and try to talk to me. This is a junior doctor named Eddie, pretty cool guy, ponytail. Eddie told Melissa, well, you can talk to him if you want, so he's like yelling at me and trying to, we don't know why he's not waking up. Why is he not waking up? And we were telling him this whole time from day one, from the day I passed out from that first medicine they gave me, I was telling him how sensitive I am to drugs. I've never done any drugs in my life, never smoked pot, never even smoked cigarettes, and I'm lightweight when it comes to alcohol, real lightweight. And I can't handle drugs, You take what you give a normal person and cut it at least in half, and that's what's going on with the anesthesia. I'm not waking up, and they keep dialing it back, dialing it back, dialing it back. Finally, Melissa said on like the 5th to 6th day, you got to shut that crap right off if you want him to wake up. And it took them another day to figure that out, and finally they did. They shut it off. And I woke up. But I'll tell you this story. There's a side story here. When I was waiting to get my heart, these guys have a little non-profit group. His name was Glenn. If you're out there, Glenn, this is going to be a rough story for you, but these 2 guys came to visit me in my room. One of them had had a heart transplant 6 years earlier, and the other one had LVAD. And they were telling me kind of that I had a million questions for those guys. What can I expect, And one of my questions for Glenn, the guy who had the heart transplant, was, I'm really worried about what happens when I first wake up after the surgery. What happens there? How rough is it, Glenn? And Glenn's like, oh, you won't even feel a thing. You'll be so out of it, Joe. It's nothing, cakewalk. You won't even care. You won't even care. So I wake up from the surgery, and it might be because they shut off the anesthesia or turned it way down to nothing anyway. I woke up, I had a feeding tube and a breathing tube down my throat, and I was gagging on those things. I mean, just gagging. And my arms and legs felt like they weighed 800 pounds. I couldn't move. I was so miserable. And the nurse put the clicker, to call a nurse. I have in the intensive care unit, I had my own nurse with a station right in there with me all the time. But they gave me the emergency button, and I was too weak to push that button. I couldn't even keep it in my hand. That's how weak I was. It might have been the anesthesia still wearing off, but I mean, it just was awful. And a few days later, like 4 or 5 days later, when they finally pulled that breathing tube out so I could talk, I was laying there. I wanted those tubes out so bad, and I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't. And Melissa's next to me, my wife, and I'm like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And she goes, he's trying to talk. He's trying to talk, And I was trying to say tube out, tubes out. And I couldn't do it. And she's like, I think he's got a, it made like a ooh noise. I think he's got a poop or something like that. I don't know what it was, but it was not good. And so I'm laying there just helpless for days and miserable. And when they first pulled the breathing tube out so I could actually talk, I was really hoarse and I could barely talk, but I was like, I'm gonna kill Glenn. Glenn lied to me. He told me it was going to be such a cakewalk when I first woke up from surgery, and it was awful. that sucker lied to me, man. You know, and Melissa, she doesn't remember who Glenn is. I don't know if she ever even met Glenn. You know what I mean? She's thinking I'm crazy. Who's Glenn? She's, you know, I don't know if I'm half looped up still or what, you know. But she said, you know, they warned her that I might be angry and there are all these bad things that could happen when I come out of the anesthesia. And I was sitting there telling her I was going to kill Glenn. And I'm not going to kill you, Glenn, if you see this. Thank you for your help, by the way. And you warned me that every patient's different. I know that. So yeah, they got that breathing tube out, but they left that feeding tube in for about, at least another week. And that was awful because toward the end there, I'm trying to eat food and get it past that big old giant tube, you know. And I got, it was like 6 other tubes or 5 other tubes coming out of my abdomen that hooked to some kind of pump down on the bed that it sucks fluid. After the surgery, my abdomen fills up with fluid. I still have some in there, like almost 2 years later. But so they got all these tubes. I got scars. I got so many scars I can scare small children at the beach now pretty easy. But it looks like I got shot with a machine gun in my belly. I had all these, they're pretty good sized tubes, like 1/2-inch clear tubes with nasty looking stuff coming out of them, down to some kind of pump that needed to be either plugged into the wall or hooked to a battery. And of course all this, the usual wires and IVs and PICC lines, and you know, I mean, I am a Frankenstein. I mean, it's not good. And I laid there like that for at least a week before I could actually move and run the remote control and, you know, make my bed recline and come back up, you know. And they would come in. I had that swan in my neck permanently the whole time I was in there for months. And they would come in every few hours and do a right heart catheterization on me every few hours, and lay me down flat. When they did that, everything had to be just right. And then they would take these readings, and it you know, that meant no sleep. You know, every 2 hours they'd come in and take readings and junk. And one of the drugs that was in my IV was a steroid. It was like, the one that kept me alive with my bad heart was Buterol or Butamin or something like that. And then I had, of course, prednisone. And that, you know, all those drugs, they didn't sit well with me. I didn't handle the drugs well at all. And the prednisone made me diabetic. So now all of a sudden I need insulin shots. I can't move. You know, I can't go to the bathroom. I have a catheter in. I have God bless the nurses. You know what I mean? Wiping my butt for me for 2 weeks. You know, I can't move. I had to learn how to stand and walk and everything all over again. I was like a little baby. I could talk, but it was awful. But the nice part about it is they moved me to a new room. When I got out of the intensive care unit, it was a wonderful day. They moved me up to the C6 cardiac floor. I was stable enough to get the heck out of the intensive care unit. And they gave me this fantastic room. Nurses told me it was the nicest room in the whole hospital. It was at the end of the hall. It had a big glass wall on one side. And you could open the blinds and you could see right down the Mississippi River. Beautiful view. You know, I couldn't move or anything, but I could turn my head and I could look and see. You know, there was like the same boat that came. It was kind of like a paddle wheeler almost. I don't know if it was some kind of tour boat or something that would come up the stream every day at about 4:10 or so, you know. And what was really cool about it too was the bunkhouse for the rowing team was, I guess, right below me. You know, I'm at the U of M, the University of Minnesota. They had a rowing team, and those guys would be out there sometimes rowing their boats, and I could see Franklin Avenue Bridge, which is a really beautiful bridge, stone, big arches, and then the ugly I-94 bridge, which was always packed with traffic. And it's just a beautiful, you know, being blind now, when I look back at that, you know, I was actually in better shape then than I am now, to be honest with you, in my opinion, because I could see beauty, you know, and appreciate it. And I could see my wife's face. And I'm not going to say they were good times, but I was so glad. You know, now I knew I was recovering. You know, this whole time that I was in there, I knew I was either going to die and be dead, or I was getting better. I was getting better the whole time, you know, and now I'm really getting better. I got this young 20-year-old something hard in me, you know. So, you know, people ask me, you know, if I know whose heart it was. A lot of my friends are really interested in that. And they told me